how do smart founders come and solve that problem for you? Because as a consumer, you are sitting ready for that product or service, right? It's just that as an investor, how can I marry what I can see is coming to what opportunities then make sense? An Indian consumer, you're right, is value conscious. So he'll do the ROI math to say, okay, I'm paying maybe $100 more, but guess what? Maybe I'm getting 5 years extra warranty. Maybe if I go back and ask them to change my wheels, they'll do it for me, right? So
Rishika, the big elephant in the room, the Indian consumer story.
Yes.
It's come home to roost.
yes.
You've been watching this since 2007. Can you help us understand this better? Because there's so many pieces to it. You know, in the past, you'd hear about the moat of the distributors of HLL and Procter & Gamble. Then you hear about, you know, what happened with D2C and what's happening with D2C. And now we're talking about quick commerce.
Yeah.
This is moving very rapidly.
Yeah.
Can you peel the onion for us? So let's start with the past.
Yeah. Look, yes, I mean, you know, there has not only been a lot of change, like you said, but also the speed of change has accelerated. And really, if you look under the hood, it's obvious that two things have happened. One is there is more wealth in the hands of young people. That is something that has started to emerge. If you think about it, our parents, you know, who are probably between the 60s and 70s, as they grew, you know, they still saw the hard life of India.
Yeah.
And at some point, you know, that pivoted into sort of wealth creation. We maybe saw the fag end of that hard life, the 80s or, you know, thereabouts. But the kids that are coming in now have no idea what strife and hardships are, right? So they have come into a world of entitlement. There is more money available. I think that is one sort of big sort of thing to understand. The other is digital has made everything ubiquitous. It's sort of created a level playing field. You spoke about Unilever and their distribution ship being such a moat.
Yeah.
But today, as you think about it, quick commerce has completely eliminated any kind of moat around distribution, right? You just have to list yourself on quick commerce, and if you're a good product, you will sell. So I think there has been a change in the way customers are now receiving products and services, the ease with which they have access. The internet has changed everything for a consumer, right? I mean, you've just got so much more access, and now you have also got the ability to spend. And when you combine that together, you suddenly have in India a dearth of brands that can actually cater to that requirement. You've got people saying, hey, we want brands. America's got these brands. Europe has got these brands. Why should I have to go out and shop for them?
True.
And now I'm willing to spend. And so that's why you're seeing that in every consumer category in India, there's either this unorganized to organized shift that's happening, or there is business model disruption where new categories are emerging. Like quick commerce is a concept that nobody would have ever thought about, right? I mean, who wants their groceries in 10 minutes?
10 minutes, yeah.
I mean, people were very happy with Amazon and Flipkart, right?
Yeah.
But I think over time, you have new business models that kind of have started making sense for this audience. And I think the last big piece is really that today's consumer is very experiential. They want an experience around the product or service that they're buying. They are not as status seeking as the previous generation was. They're more experience seeking. And that is a very important nuance for a brand to understand as they're reaching out to their audience. Because if you're simply trying to sell them a brand that looks good, feels good, okay, maybe it'll cater to a certain kind of audience. But if you can solve for making their life better and more convenient or give them a better experience, higher probability that does better for a larger part of the audience.
That's interesting because you also hear this, I don't want to be using the brands of my parents,
exactly.
Right? The youngsters, like we were talking about some of the new age, luggage brands, etc.
Yes.
Where you wonder, like, why would somebody spend that much more?
Yes.
And maybe I'm a little old school about this, and my gray hair shows it. But I'd say you could buy an equally better piece of luggage at half the price, or at least 40% less.
Yeah.
But they're like, no, I want my own brand. So I think there's also like this feeling of Indian youngsters and whatever I would say millennials wanting to have their own trajectory, and I think it comes to exactly what you said, like money, right? Digitization. So there's a lot more information floating, as well as the wallets much fatter.
Yeah.
It's all good things for India.
Yeah, no, definitely. And you touched upon a very important point, right? There used to be herd mentality in the generation before us, where if I saw something on you, I wanted that.
Yeah.
But I think that trend has very decisively shifted towards individuality.
Right.
Because you want to stand out in the digital world. If you have the same product as me, it's very hard for me to stand out. How do I stand out? How do I portray what I stand for, who I am, what I like, what I don't like, what are my eccentricities?
Yeah.
And my products and services, I am actually a brand when I walk and talk, and I'm a brand on Rishika. This is who I am as an individual.
That's right.
And that's why personalization, experiential products and services, individuality, identity brands, these are things that are starting to do very well. Customization, these are all things that customers today are seeking for this very reason, because they don't want to blend in, they want to stand out.
And I think that they also are seeing all the likes on social media.
Exactly.
That's making the desire to be unique and the desire to stand out and have their own identities become more prominent.
Exactly.
It wasn't there. There was no social media 20 years ago, right? And so do you see that influencing? Because I think it's a very important topic, is how is social media, the emergence of social media, the growth from Facebook to now Instagram to so many new other formats, right? We can't run away from this.
Yeah.
Is it here to stay, and is the Indian consumer and social media meshed?
Yeah. It's a very tricky question to answer, because every pro has a con.
Yeah.
I think social media is definitely intricately part of the Indian consumer fabric today. India is the third cheapest data market in the world, right? And so when you've got cheap data, everybody, 750 million consumers in India are on the internet. And so whether you're sitting in a tier 5 city or a village, or you're sitting in Mumbai or Delhi, you are seeing the same content. And so on one hand, it is good for brands, it is good for the economy, etc. But on the other hand, it creates wants and needs that you may not have otherwise had. Yeah. So I think, how do you still stay grounded to what is my affordability versus what I can buy? I think one is that. And two is just attention spans are coming down so dramatically. I will give you an example. I was talking to a brand and the founder was telling me that the average advertisement on Instagram has to now be 6 seconds, because that's the speed at which people are scrolling.
Oh.
So you have 6 seconds to get the consumer's attention, or they'll scroll past you.
Wow.
And my point was, what do you even show in 6 seconds beyond just your logo? I mean, what do you show? Yeah. And so marketing teams have to get so much more creative about how do you sell the value proposition in that span of time. And I think that is a bit disturbing. Yeah. That attention span is a bit disturbing to me, right? But yeah, I mean, that's...
I look at youngsters today, and I have two boys, and they're in, one is in the teens, one sub 10, and the sub 10 is actually more a teenager than the 16-year-old. And
you see this?
They want to grab any digital device. So for the ability to sit and just say, okay, I'm going to do nothing is impossible. And anyone's device, whether it's the mother's, the father's, any device, if there's an extra iPad, it's a constant scroll, right? And what worries me is what happens to the brain, because this is the brain's humming, right? It's not like you're just it's a reel on the edge of a street which you're not seeing. It's actually consuming this, right?
So and you're not going deep into anything. And your ability to sometimes get bored, which is not a bad thing. It's good to get bored sometimes, as my dad always said, right?
100%.
I don't think they know what it is to get bored, right? What is that feeling? No, it's completely alien.
No, so I think we're in the midst of a lot of shifts. I think as India, as Indian consumers. So as you look forward, right? What are you seeing? I mean, we've discussed what's emerged and what's today, but are there certain trends you see for consumer in the future? Yeah,
definitely. I think just taking forward what I said, right, which is if you look at the income pyramid in India now, like you said, gradually more and more people are moving into what we call the consuming class or the upper middle income segment, just because of disposable incomes increasing as your economy is growing, right? And so as more and more people are coming into the consuming class, India is also seeing higher levels of education and very, very individual thinking people, no longer worried about herd mentality, no longer wanting to fit in. I think one big trend that we are seeing as a result of that is just delayed marriages and reduced fertility rates. So for example, in say 1990, an average household or an average woman would have 4 children. That's down to 2 today. And 2 is your replacement rate. If you go below 2, your population starts declining.
Okay.
So that's happening in a lot of different countries, of course, right?
Yeah.
But India is at 2 at this point.
Okay.
And so what is happening is because women are coming into the workforce, one of 2 things is happening. Either, accidental pregnancies that happened earlier no longer happen because I'm just more educated, or I decide to work and get married late, and so my childbearing years are actually lesser. And so even if I want to have 4 kids, I'll end up having 2 just given that I'm getting married late, or I'm choosing not to get married, right? So we are seeing what we call DINKs, the rise of DINKs, which is double income, no kids, or double income, 1 kid. And that is changing consumption preferences a lot.
Right.
For example, food delivery apps. Right? People are now, both partners are working. We'll just order food at home. Pet or companionship. There is a sort of decisive growth in just pet ownership in India because if you're not going to have a partner for companionship, what do? And we've seen this trend already in the West. It's just coming of age in India. It was inevitable at some point, right?
Right.
More senior care and elderly care opportunities, because now with children working, people may leave India, may want to migrate to different cities within the country for their work. In India, you're very ingrained. It's very joint family setup. You feel the guilt of abandoning your parents, and so elderly care is becoming a really big segment as you think about it. Because how do you manage that in a way that makes your parents feel good, makes you feel good without you having to compromise on your career? So those, I think, are some really interesting trends that we are starting to see. Early days, but you're already starting to see those emerging.
But it's fascinating you mentioned the elder care piece because, you hear about an aging population in the West, in Europe, right? The baby boomers, now they're all they're rich and they're getting old, right? And in India, because I think 50% of our population is under 28 or something, right? 29 now. You really don't give a look to what's happening at the 65 plus. But the truth is, the youngsters are more mobile for their work. And you're right, this guilt exists with a lot of us, which is, I've got aging parents and I'm not around. But I've got thankfully enough income to say, can I get some care?
Exactly.
And maybe that's a nice stopgap to help in that journey, right?
Exactly.
And it's an important part because culturally we're sort of attached at the hip on looking after our parents, right? And it's very, very different.
And that's a good thing.
It's a very good thing.
It's a good thing. It's just about, again, right, how do smart founders come and solve that problem for you? Because as a consumer, you are sitting ready for that product or service, right?
That's right.
It's just that as an investor, how can I marry what I can see is coming to what opportunities then make sense? For example, in elderly care, in my personal view, I think senior care, which is, having the real estate infrastructure, your parents take an apartment or a service apartment there. I think India is not ready for that yet. Because that is truly, I'm sending my parent into an old age home.
Yeah, that's the stigma to that.
Exactly.
Yes.
And that will happen.
Yeah.
But over the next 5 to 7 years, what are the other smaller steps that Indians can take that make them feel more comfortable before you take something as big as this, right? So I feel like eventually all of this will come. It's just a matter of time, and it's a matter of staging how some of these sectors evolve.
Yeah, and I think very good point there in terms of, because you look at where the services are playing today, it's more home care.
Exactly.
So people are willing to pay for the nurse to come home, for somebody, a caretaker to come home, and higher level.
Yeah.
Earlier it used to be the maid caring.
Yeah.
Now you're saying, I want someone who can be intellectually at a level that who can play cards with my parents, who can hang out, who can fix their phone if they don't have the app, right? So just sort of all the other needs that a typical sort of son-daughter would do are being catered to, right?
Exactly.
So I think it's a very interesting dynamic.
Exactly.
Let me ask you a question on premiumization. I hear a lot about this, right?
Yes.
And the industry, India was earlier a large packet size. Then you hear all the big brands going and saying, let's make miniatures at 5 rupees. And that was a big rage. Because consumption grew from that. You found out that the lady in a village was buying Sunsilk, small sachet, and she was saving money to buy that 8 rupee, 10 rupee, 15 rupee thing for herself. It was very much, I want to do this for me. I can't pay 300 rupees for the bottle, so let's do the 10 rupee sachet. Right? Now you're hearing, and like it's interesting, the shifts, right? Now you're hearing, oh, you can sell more expensive stuff to this cohort, right? And premiumization, the same product, but now you have 7 brands, you have 20 brands, and they're all expensive. They're not targeting to be your affordable thing, and not even affordable luxury. They're saying we're luxury.
Yeah.
Are you seeing that? And do you feel we have legs? Because I always worry that as Indians we're just conjuice.
Too value conscious.
And value conscious.
No, you'd be very surprised. I think what has happened is earlier consumers had less choice and had less knowledge and understanding of what went into the product, right? If I had a Sunsilk, I had a Pantene, I had an A and a B, they were all the same to me. But today, what is happening is brands are trying to call out what they stand for.
Right.
And as a consumer, I can see that, okay, brand A is delivering on this promise, brand B is delivering on this promise, but hey, for this promise, this is what I have to pay. For example, we've invested in a company, Country Delight, which is premiumization as a story. They basically started by saying that we promise to give you unadulterated milk at your doorstep, but we will charge you 20% premium for that. And we will prove to you that our product is indeed unadulterated when you compare it to anybody else. Now, once a customer knows that I can buy A, which is adulterated, or I can buy B, which is unadulterated at a slightly higher price, I have, again, like we discussed, the willingness and the ability to spend, I will go for B. So premiumization is natural when you can create awareness about it. There was no awareness before of what good looks like.
Right.
So now people, the level of education brands are doing and investing in is making now if you know, for example, that this milk is better quality than the other one, it will be very hard for you to have the inferior milk or give it to your kid.
That's right.
As long as you can afford it. So I think it's the education, and social media has helped there. So I think it's the education level that social media has made accessible, that has really made customers a lot more picky on what it is that they want to buy.
Interesting. And you see that in the West.
Yeah.
The amount of, like, if you look at luggage and you look at Tumi, and I think it was 25 years ago when I was in the US, people didn't even know what ballistic nylon was, and then you were buying luggage for like $300, $400, because it said it could run 20 years.
Yeah.
Right, and it's still there.
Yeah.
And so I think you're right. I think the education piece, people realizing what's going into making the product
exactly.
is making a big difference.
And what will you get out of that? So I'll pay a little more for a to-me, but what am I getting in exchange for that, and how long? So when an Indian consumer, you're right, is value conscious, so he'll do the ROI math to say, okay, I'm paying maybe $100 more, but guess what? Maybe I'm getting 5 years extra warranty. Correct. Maybe if I go back and ask them to change my wheels, they'll do it for me, right? So mathematically, it makes more sense. So I think that's how the value for money equation has just evolved.